Clara's hands trembled as she held the notebook, its pages filled with drawings that no mother should ever find in her 10-year-old son's possession. The afternoon sun streaming through the bedroom window seemed to mock the darkness of the moment, casting cheerful shadows across illustrations that spoke of innocence corrupted. As she sank onto Liam's carefully made bed, her mind raced through all the signs she had missed, all the moments she should have seen coming. If only she could go back 3 months to that sunny Monday morning when everything began to change. The morning air hummed with the excited chatter of children, their voices carrying across the schoolyard like birds welcoming the dawn. Autumn had painted the trees in shades of amber and gold, though none of the students paid attention to nature's display. Their eyes were fixed on screens that glowed with artificial light, their fingers dancing across glass surfaces that promised endless entertainment. Liam Matthews stood at the edge of the playground, his green eyes taking in everything while trying to appear as though he wasn't watching at all. The other children huddled in small groups, their heads bent over smartphones, sharing videos and comparing games with the passionate intensity only 10-year-olds could muster. In his pocket, Liam's hands closed around nothing but lint and a forgotten piece of candy. "Look at this new game," Jeremy Chen's voice carried across the yard. "The graphics are insane." A chorus of impressed whispers followed, and Liam felt the familiar ache of exclusion settle in his chest. He knew, as did his classmates, that he was the only one in 5th grade without a phone. His mother, Clara, believed in raising children the old-fashioned way, though Liam often wondered if old-fashioned was just another word for behind the times. What Clara couldn't see from her office across town was how her son's shoulders slumped slightly each time he was left out of a conversation about apps or games. She couldn't know how he pretended to be busy with his shoelaces whenever groups formed around glowing screens. But the omniscient eye of fate watched it all, knowing that this day would be different. This would be the day Liam decided to change his circumstances. So far, in her classroom, Emily Matthews, Liam's 12-year-old sister, was having a very different morning. While her brother yearned for technology he didn't have, Emily sat in the back row of her 7th grade class, half listening to her teacher's explanation of photosynthesis while texting under her desk. She had earned her phone through good grades and responsible behavior, a fact she never tired of reminding her younger brother. What Emily didn't know, what none of them knew, was how this privilege would soon become entangled in events that would shake their family to its core. The universe held its breath as Liam walked home that afternoon, his mind made up. The autumn wind rustled through the trees, sending leaves skating across his path like nature's own smartphone screens, but Liam barely noticed. His thoughts were focused on the conversation ahead, rehearsing arguments and counter-arguments with the careful precision of a child who knew his mother's mind almost as well as his own. Clara Matthews stood in her kitchen, unaware that her son's footsteps on the front path marked the beginning of a journey that would test them all. She hummed as she chopped vegetables for dinner, her knife creating a steady rhythm against the cutting board. The scent of herbs and garlic filled the air, mixing with the warmth from the oven where chicken was roasting. A normal evening in the Matthews household, though normalcy was about to become a distant memory. The front door opened, and Clara felt a slight shift in air pressure that announced her son's arrival. She didn't need to turn around to know that Liam was standing in the kitchen doorway, gathering his courage. Mothers always know these things, even before their children speak. What she couldn't know, was that this ordinary moment would later be remembered as the pivot point, the instant when their family story began its irrevocable turn toward chaos and eventually redemption. "Mom," Liam's voice was steady, betraying none of the butterflies that danced in his stomach. "Can I ask you something?" Clara turned, wiping her hands on her apron, and looked at her son. The late afternoon sun caught his hair, turning it to copper, and for a moment she saw him as both the child he was and the teenager he would soon become. The knife lay forgotten on the cutting board as mother and son faced each other, neither aware that they stood on the threshold of events that would change them all forever. Clara studied her son's face, noting how his freckles stood out against skin pale with anticipation. In the living room, Emily's footsteps creaked across the ceiling as she paced above them, pretending to be absorbed in her own world while straining to hear the conversation below. All three Matthews knew this moment would define their coming months, though none could guess just how profound that definition would become. "Well," Liam began, his rehearsed speech suddenly deserting him. "Everyone in my class has a phone now." The words tumbled out faster than he intended, carrying with them the weight of countless playground moments spent on the periphery of excitement. "They use them for schoolwork and games, and you feel left out," Clara finished, her voice gentle but firm. She had known this conversation was coming, had seen it approaching in the wistful glances Liam cast at his classmates' devices, in the way he lingered near groups huddled around glowing screens. What she couldn't see was the future stretching before them, a path paved with good intentions that would lead them places none of them expected. Upstairs, Emily rolled her eyes at her brother's clumsy attempt at persuasion. She remembered her own careful campaign 2 years ago, how she had structured her arguments with the precision of a lawyer presenting a case. Now, listening to Liam's fumbling words, she felt both superior and strangely protective. If only she knew how their technological fates would soon become intertwined. "Mom, I promise I'll be responsible," Liam continued, gaining confidence as he spoke. "I'll only use it for school and keeping up with friends. Please." His green eyes, so like his father's, met Clara's brown ones with a mixture of hope and determination. Clara turned back to the cutting board, buying time as she considered her response. The knife resumed its steady rhythm against the vegetables, each chop punctuating her thoughts. She knew the world her children inhabited was different from the one she had grown up in. Technology wasn't just a luxury anymore. It was the language their generation spoke, the air they breathed. Yet something in her, call it maternal instinct, call it old-fashioned wisdom, whispered caution. The universe held its breath as Clara made her decision, knowing that this moment would ripple through time like a stone cast into still water. Outside, a cloud passed over the sun, briefly dimming the kitchen's warm glow, as if nature itself acknowledged the gravity of the moment. "Liam," she said finally, setting down her knife and turning to face him fully. "I understand why you want a phone, but these things come with responsibility, more responsibility than most 10-year-olds are ready for." She paused, watching his face fall, then added, "However, in that moment of suspension, Emily crept halfway down the stairs, drawn by the familiar tone in her mother's voice, the one that meant a deal was about to be struck. She sat on the middle step, her phone forgotten in her pocket, as she listened to the terms that would set their family's future in motion. Forest Odeji seemed more than happy, but the moment she held out her hand, in a gesture of unhappy banter, Clara continued, "I'll buy you a phone." But she held up a finger as Liam's face lit up. "This isn't just about the phone. I want you to understand the value of earning something through hard work." What Clara couldn't know was that her well-intentioned challenge would become the catalyst for changes that would transform their family forever. She saw only the immediate future, her son applying himself to his studies, learning discipline and dedication. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, saw further, saw how this simple agreement would set in motion events that would test the very foundations of their family bonds. Liam's excitement radiated through the kitchen like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Really? You mean it?" His voice cracked with emotion, and for a moment Clara saw again the little boy who used to believe his mother could make anything possible. "I mean it," she confirmed, her tone carrying both promise and warning. "But remember, Liam, first place, not second, not third. I want to see real commitment." On her step, Emily smirked, remembering her own journey to phone ownership. But there was something different about this moment, something that set it apart from her experience. Perhaps it was the intensity in Liam's voice, or the way Clara's eyes held a shadow of uncertainty, or perhaps it was simply that the universe knew what they did not, that this was no ordinary mother-son agreement, but the first domino in a line that would eventually topple them all. That evening, as shadows lengthened across the Matthews home, each family member retreated into their own thoughts. Clara busied herself with dinner preparations, wondering if she had made the right decision. Emily sprawled on her bed, absently scrolling through social media while contemplating her brother's challenge, and Liam sat at his desk, textbooks open before him, his determination burning bright as a newly lit flame. None of them knew that this ordinary Monday evening marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey. They couldn't see how their choices, made with the best of intentions, would lead them down paths they never imagined. But the universe knew, and in the gathering dusk, it watched as the Matthews family took their first steps toward a future that would test them all. The weeks that followed transformed the Matthews household in ways both subtle and profound. Where once Liam's desk had collected dust and forgotten comic books, it now bore the weight of textbooks and carefully organized notes. The universe watched as determination reshaped not just his habits, but his very character, even as it laid the groundwork for changes none could foresee. Each morning, Liam woke before his alarm, the promise of a phone pulling him from dreams into focused reality. He had created a study schedule that would have impressed even his most diligent teachers, not that they needed much impressing these days. His hand shot up so frequently in class that Mrs. Peterson had begun calling on other students first, just to give them a chance. Emily, watching from the sidelines of his transformation, felt her initial amusement give way to something closer to respect. "You are really serious about this fun, huh?" she remarked one evening, leaning against his doorframe. Her own phone sat warm in her pocket, a constant companion she now took for granted. Long before that, some space of time had passed, and now Hoppy was on his own DC. "It's not just about the phone anymore," Liam replied, not looking up from his math problems. The universe noted the truth in his words, even as it recognized the irony they contained. For indeed, it had never been just about the phone, though none of them yet understood exactly what it was about. Clara observed her son's dedication with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She watched him decline invitations to play soccer after school, saw him forsake his beloved video game console for extra study sessions. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between dinner and bedtime, she wondered if she had pushed him too hard, set the bar too high. But then she would peek into his room and see him bent over his books, face glowing with the satisfaction of understanding something new, and her doubts would recede like shadows at dawn. What none of them could see was how this period of intense focus was reshaping not just Liam's academic abilities, but his understanding of reward and consequence. Each correct answer, each improved test score, reinforced a dangerous lesson. That desire, when backed by sufficient determination, could overcome any obstacle, even those that perhaps shouldn't be overcome. The days merged into weeks and weeks into months. Autumn's golden leaves gave way to winter's crystalline chill, and still Liam persisted. His teachers began sending notes home, praising his remarkable improvement. His classmates, who had once barely noticed his absence from their fun-centered circles, now sought his help with difficult problems. Then came the day they had all been waiting for, the end of term. The universe held its breath as Mrs. Peterson stood before the class, final grades clutched in her hands like precious artifacts. Liam sat at his desk, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles showed white, as she began announcing the rankings. And in first place, Mrs. Peterson paused, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. With the highest grade point average this class has seen in 5 years, Liam Matthews. The words seemed to stop for a moment, then rush forward again in a blur of congratulations and excitement. Liam barely registered his classmates' reactions, his mind already racing ahead to the promise that would now be fulfilled. He had done it. He had actually done it. That afternoon, as Liam burst through the front door with his report card clutched triumphantly in his hand, Clara was already waiting. She had received an email from Mrs. Peterson hours earlier, but she let her son have his moment of revelation. Mom, I did it! Liam's voice carried through the house, bringing Emily running down the stairs. First place, just like you said. Clara took the report card with steady hands, though her heart raced with emotions she couldn't quite name. Pride, certainly, but also something else, a whisper of uncertainty that she quickly pushed aside. You certainly did, she said, pulling him into a hug. You worked so hard for this, Liam. I'm very proud of you. That weekend, as promised, Clara took Liam to the store. The universe watched as they stood before the wall of phones, each glowing screen a portal to possibilities none of them could imagine. Emily tagged along, offering expert advice gleaned from hours of online research and personal experience. This one, she said, pointing to a sleek Android model. It's perfect for beginners, but still has all the good features. Clara nodded, trying to ignore the price tag that seemed to mock her old-fashioned sensibilities. But a promise was a promise, and Liam had more than earned it. As the sales associate rang up their purchase, none of them noticed how the fluorescent store lights cast strange shadows, how they seemed to dance like warning signals across the phone's pristine screen. That evening, Liam sat cross-legged on his bed, the new phone glowing in his hands like a captured star. Emily perched beside him, helping him navigate through setup screens and app downloads, their heads bent together in technological communion. In the doorway, Clara watched her children sharing this moment, their faces illuminated by the device's soft light. The scene looked perfect, a reward justly earned, a family sharing in one member's achievement. But the universe, in its infinite wisdom, saw what they could not, that this moment of triumph was also a moment of transition. The phone, earned through dedication and determination, would become not just a tool of connection, but a key unlocking doors that perhaps should have remained closed. As night fell over the Matthews household, the new device's screen continued to glow, its light casting shadows that would soon grow longer and darker than any of them could imagine. The universe has a way of marking moments of change. Sometimes it's with thunder and lightning, sometimes with whispered winds, and sometimes, as in the Matthews household, with a soft blue glow of a screen in a darkened room. At first, the changes were subtle, like shadows lengthening at dusk. Liam used his phone exactly as promised. Many educational apps dominated his screen time, games remained age-appropriate, and YouTube searches stayed within safe boundaries. Clara would often peek into his room to find him using math apps or watching science videos, her pride in his responsibility momentarily quieting the whispers of concern that sometimes crept into her thoughts. Emily too seemed to have found a new connection with her brother through the shared territory of technology. The siblings who had once occupied separate spheres now spent hours together, heads bent over the glowing screen, ostensibly helping each other with homework or sharing interesting videos. But the universe, ever watchful, saw how their innocent exploration began to shift, like a compass needle, slowly turning away from true north. It started with a pop-up ad, bright, flashy, and promising excitement. The siblings were alone one evening, Clara working late at the office, when it appeared on Liam's screen. The universe noted how their curiosity flickered to life, how their fingers hesitated over the bright click here button, how their shared glance carried the weight of a decision that would alter their path irrevocably. "What do you think it is?" Emily whispered, though no one else was home to hear. Liam shrugged, but his finger had already moved, drawn to the forbidden like a moth to flame. Probably just another game. The universe watched as the siblings entered territory they weren't prepared to navigate. The images that filled the screen weren't games at all, but rather content that confused and fascinated their young minds in equal measure. They quickly closed the tab, but the seed had been planted, a seed that would grow into something neither of them fully understood. Days passed, and the Matthews household maintained its routine on the surface. Clara cooked dinners, checked homework, and maintained her watchful eye over her children's activities. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, changes were taking root. Liam began keeping his phone angled away from others' views. Emily's visits to his room became more frequent, their shared giggles carrying a new undercurrent of secrecy. The universe observed how their behavior shifted in subtle ways. Liam, once eager to share his phone activities with his mother, now quickly switched screens when she entered the room. Emily developed a habit of checking the hallway before closing Liam's door for their study sessions. Their conversations took on coded meanings, shared glances carrying weights that only they understood. Clara noticed changes too, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what was different. She saw how Liam's eyes would sometimes dart away from hers during dinner conversations, how Emily's usual chattiness had given way to long periods of distracted silence. But like many parents, she attributed these changes to the normal turbulence of growing up, unaware of the currents pulling her children into deeper waters. She reluctantly understood that sometimes the things would happen on My Dear or Son. The siblings' exploration of forbidden content became a secret ritual, conducted in whispered conversations and careful glances. Each new discovery led them further from the shores of innocence, though neither fully grasped the significance of their journey. The universe watched as their curiosity morphed into compulsion, their shared secret becoming both a bond and a burden. Nights in the Matthews house took on a new rhythm. After Clara's bedroom light went out, soft footsteps would cross the hallway. Emily would slip into Liam's room, their faces illuminated by the phone's glow as they explored content that fascinated and confused them. The universe noted how their innocence began to crack like ice in spring, though the full thaw was yet to come. Their days became a careful dance of appearances. At school, Liam maintained his stellar grades, his teachers none the wiser to the changes taking place beneath his studious exterior. Emily excelled in her own classes, her growing preoccupation hidden behind a mask of teenage normalcy. But the weight of their secrets began to show in small ways. Dark circles under eyes, jumped responses to unexpected noises, doors closed that had once stood open. Clara, meanwhile, felt the shifting dynamics, but couldn't quite grasp their source. She noticed how her children seemed to exist in their own world now, bound together by something she couldn't see. Their shared looks carried meanings she couldn't decode. Their whispered conversations, falling silent when she approached. The mother who had once known her children's every thought now found herself on the outside, looking in through a window that grew cloudier by the day. As winter melted into spring, the changes in the Matthews household solidified like frost into ice. The siblings' secret knowledge shaped their understanding of the world in ways that would have horrified their mother had she known. Their innocent exploration had led them into territory that would soon threaten the very foundations of their family. The universe, watching it all unfold, saw how each small choice, each moment of curiosity satisfied, led them further from the path of normalcy. Like a stream flowing inevitably toward a waterfall, their journey had taken on a momentum of its own. And though none of them knew it yet, they were approaching the edge of a precipice from which there would be no easy return. Fate, in its infinite wisdom, often chooses ordinary moments for extraordinary revelations. For the Matthews family, that moment arrived on a quiet Saturday afternoon, when spring sunshine painted their home in deceptively peaceful light. Clara had been cleaning the house, her mind occupied with mundane thoughts, of mundane plans, of laundry and dinner plans. The universe watched as she entered Liam's room, dust clod in hand, unaware that she stood on the threshold of a discovery that would shatter her family's carefully maintained facade. Liam's phone lay forgotten on his desk, abandoned in his rush to attend a friend's birthday party. Emily had gone with him, the siblings' unusual closeness now taken for granted by their mother. Clara picked up the phone, meaning only to move it while dusting. But something, call it maternal instinct, call it fate's gentle nudge, made her pause. The screen lit up at her touch, and Clara's world tilted on its axis. "No!" she whispered, her fingers trembling as she navigated through the browser history. "Oh no!" Each tap revealed new horrors, each discovery driving the knife of realization deeper into her heart. The dust cloth fell forgotten to the floor as she sank onto Liam's bed, her legs no longer able to support her. But the phone was only the beginning. As though guided by some unseen hand, Clara's eyes were drawn to Liam's desk drawer, slightly ajar. Inside lay a notebook, its pages filled with drawings and notes that no parent should ever have to find. The universe held its breath as Clara turned page after page, each one revealing the extent of her children's secret exploration. Time seemed to stop in that sunlit room as Clara's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. Memories began to realign themselves like pieces of a horrible puzzle. The whispered conversations, the closed doors, the subtle changes in her children's behavior. How had she not seen it? How had she missed the signs? When the sound of the front door opening shattered the silence, hours later, Clara had not moved from her position on Liam's bed. The notebook lay open in her lap, the phone beside her like a smoking gun. Downstairs, she could hear her children's laughter, still riding the high of birthday cake and celebration, unaware that their secret world was about to crumble.